Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, all about autonomous vehicles, or AVs. My name is Courtney Goldberg from Transaction Associates, and joining me to facilitate today's webinar are Kelly Marsacci and Julie Quinn, as well as our presenter, Marie Lauren, Director of Business Development for Stantec, on their autonomous vehicles consulting arm called GenerationAV. Marie and her team are responsible for accelerating the adoption of AVs. This webinar is brought to you by Transaction Associates. We manage transportation management associations, or TMAs, as well as private commuter services programs for workplaces, property developments, and residential buildings. As a full-service transportation company, we promote green commuting benefits and operate shuttle services. Autonomous vehicles and autonomous vehicle technology have already begun to integrate with our lives. Today, Marie will touch on the present and future of AVs and what to look for as the technology develops. This webinar is being recorded. After the presentations, there will be some time for questions. Please use the Q&A feature to submit any questions, and we will do our best to answer them. Before turning it over to Marie, we'd like to start with a polling question.
Absolutely. So yeah, just a quick poll about what interests you most about AV. So leave this poll open for about 30 seconds or so. But what interests you most about AV? Is it types of AV? Is it the benefits and impacts of AV? Is it the future of AV? And then we'll kind of go from there. So it looks like we got about 50% of the votes in, so we'll leave this open for a couple more seconds. You guys are quick. All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close the poll. So if you haven't gotten your votes in, get it in now. And we'll go ahead and share the results. So it looks like most people are interested in the future of AV, followed by the benefits and the impact of AV, and then the types of AV. So before Marie's presentation, I had no idea there were different types of AV. So go ahead, Marie.
Great. I'm just going to share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yep, look great.
Perfect. So thank you so much for having me today. I'm really, really happy to have the chance to talk about AV, which is my passion. Kelly, you said you didn't know there was a different type of AV. That's okay. That's my job to do that and to inform you about it. So, and if you have any questions during the presentation, please, please, please send your question my way. I like the interaction and I like the possibility to answer the question as it goes. So please feel free to send those questions. And Kelly, Julie, Courtney, you can interrupt me at any time to ask those questions. So just wanted to start by talking to you a little bit about GenerationAV. So GenerationAV is as Courtney was saying, the innovation arm of Stantec. And we are working with different type of clients or different type of opportunities just to really provide all the different steps that can lead to an AV deployment. But I would say that right now what we see a lot is people that are interested in AV. So they're reaching out to us just to learn a little bit more about what it is and how it could have an impact with their organization or in their community. When we think of AV, a lot of people will think about the low-speed autonomous vehicle, which is what you can see in the newspaper or in the news in general. Low-speed autonomous shuttle are shiny and bright, and they've been used a lot for PR and communication purposes. What we are working on in the next couple of months and the next couple of years is really to find a purpose for these low-speed autonomous vehicles and to have an environment where they really become a real solution, a real mobility, sustainable solution in their community, and not just something that is cool to have around. So you might have seen those ones around. This one is the Ollie one. We also have the EasyMile one and Navia one. Those are the three major that you see a lot. When we think of autonomous vehicle, a lot of people also think of the single occupancy vehicle, such as Tesla, that has the autonomous capabilities. I'm just going to stay a little bit far from that right now, just because I really feel like we need to have sustainable solution that works for the community in general and not just for people that have the money to buy their single occupancy vehicle. It's still a great solution. It's still something good, but I just want to get the community feeling there and just think a little bit wider than just a single occupancy vehicle. So you have a different option when it comes down to AV. Like Kelly was saying earlier, there's different options. You can have the people mover, but you can also have the good mover. A lot of people heard about Amazon doing their test with drones doing the delivery. There's also other good mover opportunity in the logistic chain. So it's not just for people or industry or first mile, last mile option for delivery, but it's also when it comes down to the logistic in general, drones or a little robot are usually something very interesting to optimize the operation in a warehouse or in a trucking environment. We think a lot of the first mile, last mile connector, and this is really where we see a good value for those low speed autonomous vehicle. We have really strong transportation infrastructure that are in place right now. So it's just about how we can find that one solution that could be flexible and agile, that is not so much of a planned route, but something that will really move and provide a solution for people depending on the time of the day and when the needs are. So this is where the low speed autonomous vehicle can be a really great option. The middle mile connector, I mean, it says it all. I don't need to explain what the middle mile connector is, but it's really just to keep in mind that when you think of the chain of supply, there's three big categories. So how you get the things to the warehouse, how you get the warehouse to the delivery point, and then delivery to the customer. And we often forget about that middle mile connector, where autonomous trucking or platooning, those are two different options. So the autonomous trucking is really the truck that drives by itself, but the platooning is when you have a chain of trucks. So the first one has a driver, but the two or three other one afterwards, they're just platooning to the distance. So they work according to the first one in front. It's not everywhere that is accepted right now, but there's a lot of testing that it's being done, and that will be able to kind of fill the gap where we have a challenge to hire new drivers. So this is a reality that trucking company have to deal with right now, where they can't hire enough drivers for the needs that they have. So platooning would be exponential for them, will really have a great incidence on the optimization of their fleet. There's so much more of what we can do when it comes down to AV, and I'm just showing that slide because you can see in there. So you have the tracking, the truck option, or the van option that could be used for a van pooling program, but it could also be used for delivering grocery or delivering goods to people closer to the last mile option. The little one that you see right here, I don't know if you see my arrow there, but the one that you see there is a smaller type robot. So we have some of the solution where we are doing, and again, we're not providing solution, we're working with the provider, but one of the projects that we have is to have one of these vans filled up with those little robots. So the van does the longer distance, and when it gets on the street and there's a lot of deliveries, you have those little robots that kind of get out of the truck and go and do the delivery. So it's very futuristic when you think of it that way, but it works, and it's being tested as we speak in different regions in North America, but everywhere in the world. Sorry. When we think of the buses, there is right now some tested that are being done with the bigger constructor of buses that are doing AV buses. There's also retrofit solution that could work with some public transit authority that are doing those kind of testing. Are we there yet? I don't think so. I think we still need to do those baby steps before we get to that. And the constructor right now that are building those AV buses are really, really, I would say, they don't want to go too fast. So they're conservative in their approach, and they really want to do step-by-step approach and making sure everything works fine before they start opening the gate and selling those kind of products everywhere. And the little guy that you see there, the little orange one, they're not Roomba. So if, like me, you bought your Roomba when it came out on the market 13 years ago to clean your floor. Those ones are used in the Amazon warehouse, and they're basically moving the storage. So they have those, you can see in the back, those gray shelving unit. And what that little robot does, it goes under, lift it, and then move the shelving unit. So there's nobody moving around in the warehouse. It's really the warehouse coming to the shipping people. So that's very fascinating to see that going. Kelly.
Wonderful. Yeah. So we do have another quick polling question for you. We'll get that all. So what are your sort of initial thoughts on AV? So when you think of AV, what sort of comes to mind? Is it sustainability? Is it safety? Is it job impact? Is it mobility and accessibility? So yeah, so I'm just curious what you guys think of when you think of AV. So again, we'll leave this open for about 30 seconds or so and let you get your answers in.
Maybe I can take that turn just to answer. We have a question that came
Oh
in
yeah,
the
absolutely.
Q&A.
Mhm.
So is there a country, state, province currently allowing AV on public road? The answer is yes. There's a lot of regions that are open to what they call the pilot testing. So it's not a full-on deployment, but it's just a little test, really strict duration, where people can really understand how it works and how the legislation can understand how AV works in their community and in their environment. I know that I did the first one in public road and mixed traffic in North America. So it happened in Canada 2 years ago. It was a suburb region of Montreal, but it was, we had a lot of people from the Minister of Transportation that were looking at the project to really understand all that. But I think we are there yet. We are there now. And a lot of people in governments are really facilitating that. So is there something announced as like, yes, you can do it? The answer is no. But is there capability to do it? Absolutely.
Wonderful. So yeah, so our polling question, let me just share those results with us real quick. So it looks like most people are interested in the mobility and the accessibility part, followed by job impact, safety, and then sustainability.
Great. So accessibility is really a key there. And we really think that AV can accelerate that. So I'm really happy to see that people think the same way. So for the next one, I just want to show you a little bit of a wider scope of what we think AV solution can be. And I'm going to give you some example of some environment where you think of airports as an example. You think of the plane, obviously, and you think of like all the different activities that are happening around the airport. Would it be in the airport? People moving from the parking lot to the terminal, but also everything that goes from the terminal to the plane itself. There's so many, it's like a big ballet. There's so many moving pieces and everything has to be seamless. This is where we see that AV could be a great opportunity to facilitate those movements, but also because again, there's a shortage of employees or a pool of employees. So a lot of airports that we've been talking to, they are big pool of employees for their region, but they are looking for more and more people in different jobs. So it's not for everything. Again, it's for a really specific job that they have that is really redundant, or it's really it repeats itself, or it's something that is not, that is, let's call it boring. It's something that you just do the same thing over and over. So people are not interested in those kind of jobs specifically. So a robot won't get bored to do those kind of things. So this is where we think AV could be a really great solution. So this is really to start the conversation and really get them to think of like, okay, the automated baggage loader, how can we use AV for that? The runway inspection. So a part of the budget at every airport, a big part of their budget is is used to keep the runway in mint condition. So how can we use AV or drones to actually do that kind of assessment and make sure that it's always top of the line?
Absolutely. We do have a
Yeah.
quick question, just speaking about AV and transportation. Are you aware of any initiatives by the MBTA to convert train and subway cars to driverless technologies?
There's a lot of conversation for train and subway specific to MBTA. No, if that person has more information, I would be more than happy to dig a little bit deeper and really see if there's anything that we have at Stantec. But me personally, sorry for the dog. Me
That's okay.
personally, I didn't hear anything specific to them, but I know that everywhere in the world right now, when they think of doing the train, the light rail
Mhm.
system, or the subway, most of that technology now is coming to automated.
Mhm.
And again, when we say automated, specifically for that that heavier transportation mode, it's not about not having a worker in it. There's usually always an operator that is still in the vehicle. Would it be the train or the subway?
Right.
And I see there
Yeah.
the question,
Yeah.
the question that comes from the union worker. And
Right.
absolutely, I would say everyone is nervous when it's something that is disruptive. And I think that AV is incredibly disruptive to the world that we know today. Is there a pushback? I would say yes. Why? Because they don't know what it is. You have more concern when you don't understand something than when you take the time to understand it and see how it can impact you. And this is why we work with a lot of public transit authority or port or airport and talk with them about what's the impact for them on a positive way, but what's the impact for the worker and the switch that it's going to have into the worker day to day. So if you had someone that was used to do that job every day, they might just move around a little bit and get something more interesting for them. They just need to understand how that those moving pieces will kind of get
Shift.
into each other.
Right. Well, I think you had said something earlier where it's like there's still an operator in the vehicle. They're just managing sort of the AV technology. So rather than manually driving the train, maybe you're just managing the train that is driving. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but
Quality
it's the
assurance.
same thing. It's the
Yeah.
same thing
Quality
you can say
control.
like about airport. Like when you think of a plane, the plane is basically an autonomous vehicle. Like it's an autonomous plane. There's so many tools in there and software in there that the plane doesn't drive by itself. I get that. And the pilot, I would never go on a plane that would say, hey, there's no pilot. It's just a system that is
Yeah.
doing it.
You
I
just
love the
complete
idea of
trust,
having a
yeah.
pilot.
yeah.
So it's the same thing. Right now, when we think of AV, excuse me, when we think of AV, even in ground technology, on the ground technology, there's always an operator in there. Why? Because we need to make sure that people are comfortable with that technology. We need to make sure that everything works smoothly. It's a work in progress. It's not something that will just change overnight. It's really an evolution that is happening. And the people that are doing, let's say the bus driver right now, I used to work for an operator, and what I was telling my bus driver is that they won't lose their job tomorrow. But again, like you said, Kelly, there's a shift in the work. So the one that are a little bit more towards the end of their career or more towards the retirement, they won't lose their job because there's an AV technology coming in. The one that are coming in, they might just see a shift in what they're doing. But at the end of the day, what we want to do is optimize, what everyone is looking to do is optimize the transportation system that we have right now and maybe shift some of the buses that are going through like tricky roads and like smaller size street and get them to the bigger and really like a funnel. So you bring the people to the more interesting line. So then you'll have a better return on investment for the public transit. So I feel like I'm deviating from the question there.
That's okay.
It's really just to say that the AV will not replace the employee right now at this point. We're just trying to see where the technology can help us to get better and to optimize what we are doing.
Yeah. So we do have a question in the chat. Are there any technology gaps that are creating barriers to adoption or efficiencies of AV? So sensors, data collection, analysis, etc.
Yeah, I would say that again, it's a communication thing. A lot of people think that we are getting all the data from everyone, and that I can say, okay, Courtney was there at that time of the day, and she was doing this with Julie, and they went there. I can't do that. Nobody can do that right now. There's legislation on that, and we do not want to go there. It's not about Big Brother watching your every move. We will know that people are moving from there to there, but who is it? We don't know. Like, we don't have a name and address and a phone number, so we don't have that. So there's a lot of things right now that are happening where technology is going so fast that legislation is trying to pick up. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm doing
No,
a lot
that's
of
exactly
movement
right.
here.
Yeah.
But the technology is moving faster than what we are used to. So
Yeah.
because of that, we just need to make sure that all the steps are being done accordingly to fit with the legislation, and to have the legislation pick up a little bit faster, to make
Right.
sure that we have an environment that has the privacy and the respect of everyone's privacy in that.
Right. And I think that sort of answers one of the other questions we have, as far as like the U.S. reacting to the possibility of AV platooning for trucks. That the modal subsidy variations and tax contributions to infrastructure costs, how that factors into the evolution of, integrating AV into some of those, the inner city railroads and those sorts of things.
And it also adds to the fact that AV are usually electric vehicle. So AV are EVs.
Yep.
And because they're EVs, they don't pay the taxes for the gas and everything. So that's another
Right. The
conversation
legislation
to
has
have.
to. Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So just to get back to the airports, because I know we got a lot to cover. One person was saying, people might be more comfortable accepting automated cargo flights, especially, on intercontinental routes for, I'm assuming goods rather than people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why we're focusing a lot right now on the good movement. Would it be on the grocery side, or would it be on the trucking side? Because at the end of the day, the box that you put in the vehicle doesn't care if it's a driverless vehicle or if there's somebody driving it. So there is a great way to do it, and that's one of the angles to accelerate the deployment of AV, is really by going with the movement of good at this point. And it's very interesting. We're talking about cargo. I had a presentation this morning of an organization that is doing cargo drones, and it's, once you see what's coming your way, it's very interesting, and it's mind-blowing to see what.
Well, it's also much, I mean, I guess when I thought of AVs, I thought it was like this whole robotic takeover of AVs, but it's like all these little steps where it's like, oh, this is just going to make this part easier, and it's going to make this part of it easier. And it's just
Part of automation that helps.
Yeah,
Right.
it's more of an enhancement.
right.
Exactly.
Versus
and
a
that's how we
takeover.
want to see it. Yeah. It's how we can have a more fluid traffic in the region. Because right now what we see with COVID is that there's so many people that start ordering online. So you got those like UPS, FedEx, and then you have the Post, and you have all those smaller ones. So at 4 o'clock on your street, you can have 5 different trucks parked in front of your doorstep, blocking traffic to everyone else just to deliver you a box.
Small package, right?
So
Exactly.
4 different little boxes. So those big trucks are creating congestion on your entire street for 4 little boxes. So this is where the robot could really help, and we feel like there could be a really smoothless transition, way more than a takeover. Takeover is not in the paper.
Yeah.
So we talk about airport in communities. It's also something that we need to think of. The streetcar, a lot of streetcar are coming AV2. Delivery drones, sidewalk robots. So we have region, let's say Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as an example. They consider sidewalk robot the same way as they consider pedestrian. So it's good because it can allow that technology to go on the sidewalk and to do that last mile delivery. But it's also, again, we come back to the legislation when we'll have to say, okay, but is a 100, like, I don't know, a 300-pound small robot considered the same as a 5-year-old kid walking on the sidewalk? Like, how can we legislate that? So it's a learning curve again, and it's all about collaborating with all the different stakeholders to learn from it and see how we can do that in a safe way to make sure that nobody gets injured or hurt in the process. And when I say injured or hurt, it could be by the robot, but it could also be by the technology itself, it's being overwhelmed with all that. AV in special venue, when we think of, let's say the Olympics are a big event where you have tons of people from everywhere in the world coming to one place at one time. And we know that right now, due to the current situation, Olympics are all up in the air, but one day we'll come back to a certain normal and event like the Olympics, or we can take the Super Bowl as an example too. So we'll have to find other solution to really get all those people that are concentrated in one single location to get out of it without having to wait 3 hours to just get out of the stadium. So it's all different solutions.
You don't have to leave at halftime to avoid the traffic of leaving the stadium. Yeah.
Which is sad when you pay that price to go see the game.
To miss half a game or the end of a concert. Yeah.
And it's usually that game where the last 5 minutes were the crucial one, where everything.
Of course, yeah.
Or if you decide to stay, you end up, waiting in a parking lot for hours just to get out. So
yeah. In ports, so we know ports are already really heavily automated from the everything that gets the cargo from the boat and move it, but there's all those little pieces where we have to stop thinking of AV about one single solution, but more about the integration of AV in the environment that we have. So in port, it might not be the entire movement of the cargo, but how do we match it with AV trucking solution that goes under it and just is there ready to receive the cargo. So it's all about those things. Let's just think really widely of AV and its environment before we start picking one single solution.
Yeah, and with that, I think we have another polling question. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. Just, what kind of AV do you think would be most beneficial to you? So kind of looking at all the different applications. Is it public transit? Is it goods movers? Is it event management? Is it personal vehicle technology? Like I said, I didn't really understand that there was all sorts of different types of AV. So
what is your answer to that, Kelly?
I think I am interested in the goods mover. I think, like I said, just sort of adding more automation and more ease to sort of all that stuff behind the scenes that I think just happens. Like, toilet paper doesn't just show up at the grocery store. It has to go from one place to another, to another, to another before it gets to my house. So, and yes, with the pandemic, there's a lot of online shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same goods as well, but event management too, I think is.
Yeah, that would be really interesting, I think.
I was going to say event management.
Yeah.
So you want
There's so many pieces.
You want a drone to bring you a beer at the halftime instead of waiting in line, or you want
absolutely
to pick you up?
I didn't even think of the possibilities. Yeah.
Right?
I was more thinking about a little shuttle that could pick me up and drive me to my car. I'd be parked far away.
There you go.
And then I can just leave.
Yeah.
Really fast. Or a little shuttle that'll take me to transit or something, so I don't have to wait in line.
Right.
Get on the train after a baseball game.
Right.
Looks like most of our votes have come in, so we're going to go ahead and share those results with everybody. So it looks like most people are interested in the public transit sector, followed by goods movers, personal vehicle technologies, and then event management.
Great. So when will we see AV in action? The answer is it's already happening. So we might not know because it's in a smaller pilot region, but it is happening as we speak right now. So just to show you a little bit of history when it comes down to AV. So AV has 5 different steps of autonomy. So when we think of step number 0, so it's the regular vehicle that we had for years. The level 1 is the assisted human driver. The second one is the conduct certain tasks. Let's say the parking that the ADS for parking that you can have in a vehicle. The tree reacts to the environment, so it can stop by itself, or when you think of changing lines, there's technology now. If you don't put your blinker and you try to change line, the vehicle will have resistance. So that's interacting with the environment. And then you have the operated with autonomy in certain environments. So it's pretty much, it's a program path. So you program them with the GPS technology and with the LiDAR and redundancy that is there. You can have the vehicle to circulate, but it's really a lane that has been drawn for it previously, and they will respect that lane and that path when the vehicle goes from A to B.
Is that sort of like robots moving in a warehouse? They're on a specific path. They don't deviate from that path.
They are, but that will be number 5 because they operate in the entire warehouse. Number 4 would be you have, let's say when we take up first mile, last mile with the low speed autonomous vehicle, you can say that the point A is at the exit of the subway and the point B is at the entrance of your office.
Okay.
So it will just go
back and forth
from point A to B, and it's automated, but it's not autonomous because it doesn't go.
Right. It goes automatically, but it can't go anywhere. Exactly.
Yep. And right now, a lot of people are nervous about that. But before we get to that point in all of our cities, we need to have connectivity and points of recognition to make sure that those vehicles can go anywhere, which is not the case right now. So, and that's it. That's my kind of crash course on autonomous vehicle and autonomous solution.
Beautiful. Yeah, we do have a comment, not so much a question. That, I went to college in southeastern Massachusetts. They recently started food delivery on campus via small delivery robots. The campus is more than 400 acres with a lot of pedestrian traffic, cars, and a commuter rail station. And the robots have not interfered with any of that.
So I heard about another project like that. It wasn't in the same region, but it was a project that they are having. I think it's in Atlanta. And it's with the cafeteria, and what they're doing the delivery from the cafeteria or the main cafeteria location to all of the different pavilion that they have. But it's a smaller type of robot. It's similar to the small one that I showed you previously, where you can put like one lunch or 2 or 3 lunches, and you can just deliver that to the person who ordered it. But it's really good to see. And what they do right now is a lot of the AV deployment are on dedicated route. So it's a path that is unique, like it's only for them. Nobody else, like no pedestrian, no bikes or no vehicle can actually go on that path. It's only dedicated to the AV solution that is being deployed.
Yeah. Kind of like with the railways, like you're not supposed to walk on those because trains are going there. We do have a question. How do you prevent hackers from taking over vehicles?
So one of the way to do it is to have a redundancy in the system and the software that you're using. So it's not about using one single software, but it's about let's say having 2 or 3 different connectivity and silo every kind of element. So the software provider has the entire vision, but it comes out as different silos that are really difficult to hack and really difficult to get into. And I know that all of the constructor provider are looking at that right now. I did myself a project on Parliament Hill in Ottawa, which is the equivalent of the White House. So you can think of the level of security, and they're concerned about hacking the vehicle on their premises was really, really high.
Yeah.
But it's really about just having that redundancy and that siloing approach where you can really have that security concern addressed.
Yeah. So it's more like multi-layers, if you will.
Yes. And we are working with cybersecurity provider at GenerationAV, just really to provide another stack of security to that. So we know it's already secure, but sometimes people are asking for another level, and we can provide that.
Excellent.
Yeah. So now you asked us, Marie, what kind of AV do we think will be most beneficial? Where are you in that? Are you a goods mover, a public transit, an event management, personal vehicle tech?
I like the idea of public transit for I'm going to come back to the first goal that you did, but for
Yep.
the accessibility part,
Yeah.
I think that it's very important to have solutions that are flexible and agile to make sure that all members of the community have access to the public transit. I always have the same example, but my neighbor has a disability, so he has a hard time to walk. So he usually uses wheelchair to move around. But having a wheelchair, like a bus for disabled to come and pick him up is super complicated. It's not something that is that flexible.
Right.
And he would like to just be able to go to the main bus stop, but we are about I don't know, 0.7 miles away from that bus stop. So as soon as it's raining or snowing, it's very complicated for him to get that access. And I was talking with him about that, and he's like, if I had a little AV that can just come and pick me up and do that 0.7 miles with me to make sure that I have access to it will make my life so much easier.
Right.
And
Well, you just expand your whole reach of where you can get to, your independence. Yeah, it's huge.
And he wouldn't have to wait on his mom or wait on anybody else because he's a young guy.
And then once that one goes and takes him to the bus stop, then it can turn around and get somebody else close by. And
and because those low-speed autonomous vehicle, like I'm coming to my street here in my reality, but I have a school on my street too. So because that vehicle goes really slowly, it's no concern with the speed because of the school. So it's just like a mix of all those different realities that could really increase the accessibility. So I like the public transit angle.
Yeah. Now, what do you think?
I would like public transit authority to be a little bit more out there, be a little bit more interested with that.
Yeah. So we do have a comment. Parents wouldn't have to deal with carpools bringing kids to soccer practice. You'd have
absolutely
people mover to do that for us.
There you go.
Yeah.
You can have a dedicated AV for the soccer team. So it just goes around and picks up all the kids with the
or take them off the field, bring them to the parking lot, drop them off at their parents' cars so that they don't have to sit on the sidelines freezing.
I like this one.
Me too.
So wonderful. So I think that's all the questions we have for now.
I think so. There's no others. Yes. Anybody?
So we'll definitely have the information for Marie France, in our follow-up emails. And if you have any questions after that, obviously you know how to get in touch with us.
Well, thank you very much to Marie and to all of you for joining us and for having a really engaging webinar. It was good to see all of your questions and comments and links shared. If you have any additional questions or comments, you can reply to our follow-up email and your commuter service representative will get in touch with you. Thanks again. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.